Hello everybody, I am Mrs. H. I'm a credentialed English teacher and I am creating free YouTube resources during the COVID-19 school closures. This is specifically geared for the students enrolled in my class and to accompany some of the assignments that I have been giving them remotely. Since I don't get very much time with them over Zoom to do full lessons, I thought I would make some tutorials to help them out since I can't actually be side by side with them in the classroom. But these videos are made with all students in mind and all the standards that 6th through 10th grade students are supposed to master. For 6th graders, some of this might be newer stuff, whereas for 10th graders, a lot of this will be review or reminding you of some stuff you may have forgotten that are part of the foundations of writing or reading. This particular video, we are going to be talking about persuasive body paragraphs. To get the most out of this video, you need a background knowledge of body paragraphs in general. So if I say topic sentence, evidence, analysis, concluding sentence, and you're feeling kind of lost already, you don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to want to watch my previous video on stoplight paragraphs, because that is what I call body paragraphs because of the color coding I use. And I will be using color coding in this paragraph too. If you're pretty familiar, I said those 4 terms, and you're feeling pretty good about what body paragraphs are, and you're ready to level it up and figure out how do I use that structure in a persuasive essay, this video is for you. So let's get to the tutorial. Persuasive body paragraphs. Today I'm going to be talking about persuasive body paragraphs. This structure of paragraph that I'm using is also known as Jane Schaefer, which is one of the terms I hear from further back. Step up to writing is a more recent term, and I know a lot of school districts use that. I just like to call it a stoplight paragraph because I don't have a formal program for it. I've kind of taken the best of what I've seen alongside my writing training, and because of the color coding, it's called a stoplight paragraph. If you've never heard of this before, or I get into this and the structure is unfamiliar, again, go watch my previous video on body paragraphs in general, because that gives you a really good foundation for understanding everything here. I am aiming to help 6th through 10th graders with writing. So we're going to work with persuasive today. So this is working with nonfiction texts, and this type of body paragraph and writing style will span any genre. I say that about almost everything I teach, and that's because I've got this aim to make sure that you guys are gaining skills not just to use in your English classes, but in all kinds of writing situations, and the foundation for writing skills you will one day need in the workplace. How to get the most out of this video, just like my previous videos, you should watch on a larger screen such as a tablet or a full-size computer. I am going to be including full paragraphs on the screen and color coding them, and it's going to require you to be able to read them. And if you can't read along with me, you're going to have a hard time seeing and understanding what's going on. So please do watch on a larger screen. Body paragraphs are a huge topic, and even huger when we talk about persuasive body paragraphs. So do take breaks when you need to. I do put in some suggested break spots after I talk about evidence, again after I talk about analysis. So they are coming and they are built in at about 15 to 20 minute intervals, but if you need more breaks than that, it just depends on you, what kind of day you're having, or how approachable this topic is for you. I know it's not the most exciting stuff. Just go ahead and hit pause on the video, take your break, and come back when you're ready. Even if it's the next day, don't forget to come back. Okay, what is a body paragraph? You might recognize this from my previous video where I showed you just at a glance what a full essay looks like visually when we kind of lay out the papers. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I just want you to see visually, in the context of a full essay, what is a body paragraph. So in this essay, we've got an introduction right here. And then we've got our first body paragraph. This, by the way, is a persuasive essay. So you've got body paragraph 1 here. This is a 7th grade persuasive essay. So if you're in an older grade, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, this might look a little short, but it is a completely appropriate size for 7th grade. And then you've got a second body paragraph right here. And this is what they look like in this in the role of an overall essay. Down here we've got the start of a counter argument, and I'm going to do a separate video on those. So in order to understand body paragraphs, we do need to see the introduction, most importantly the thesis statement, because all the body paragraphs are built off of the thesis statement, but it's good to have a sense of the introduction so that we could see how the body paragraph flows. So I'm going to quickly read the introduction and really emphasize the thesis for you. By the way, if you are interested in introductions or learning more about introductions and you haven't seen my video on introductions, I will link it in a card above. For years, people have wondered, how can we make ourselves healthier? A junk food or soda tax would be one way to do just that. Many Americans know that what junk food can do to your body. Yet people are still choosing chips and Pepsi over fruit bowls and water, resulting in diseases like obesity and diabetes, shortening the lives of many Americans. Thesis statement: the United States should adopt a junk food tax because of the issue of obesity and the fact that people need help changing their buying habits. That is the most important sentence because I have, if you haven't seen my thesis video, go see that. I'm linking back to a lot of my videos because what I'm talking about requires quite a bit of prior knowledge and training. The United States should adopt a junk food tax. That is my stance. Because of the issue of obesity, that is reason one. And the fact that people need help changing their buying habits, that is reason two. So here's my first body paragraph. For this first one, I've decided to do a one chunk paragraph, meaning I only included one quote. I will soon talk about, later in this video, when to do one quote, when to do two quotes, and what two quote body paragraphs look like. But for the sake of fitting it in the screen and simplicity, I just did one quote. So I'm going to read you my first body paragraph. Topic sentence: the issue of obesity and public health is one reason for why the United States should adopt a junk food tax. Evidence: Robin Abkarian, journalist for the Los Angeles Times, cites retired cardiologist Jeff Ritterman. Quote, Ritterman began researching the issue. He concluded that sugary drinks were a culprit. The empty calories made kids fat and susceptible to incurable illnesses such as diabetes. In-text citation, Abkarian. Analysis. As a former cardiologist or heart doctor, Dr. Jeff Ritterman has the training and experience to research and assess what might be causing a health problem. Though there are many factors that can cause obesity and disease, Dr. Ritterman has found one common factor among American children which can be curbed: consuming sugary drinks. These drinks are tasty and addicting, and when they are cheaper than a healthier drink, such as a bottle of water, they are even easier to reach for. Making a good health choice is a struggle for many adults, and it takes a lot of self-discipline for a grown-up to choose wisely, so children would also face the same struggle in the drink aisle at the store. If soda and sugary drinks were priced significantly higher than healthy drinks, parents could take more control over their kids' buying habits by only providing enough allowance to purchase a healthy drink during an after-school convenience store visit with friends. Imagine the difference a junk food tax would make if it prevented even just 1 out of every 4 kids from purchasing a sugary drink. Obesity would be reduced, and so would diet-related diseases. The difference could be extended into the adult community if the heightened price of a sugary drink caused just 1 in every 4 adults to reach for a healthier beverage instead. Concluding sentence: a junk food tax would have a positive impact on public health in the United States. This is a full paragraph, and I'm going to go into detail with what you see here and how I found it, but I just wanted you to get a sense of what it looks like on the page, written out, color-coded. By the way, this is a persuasive essay that I wrote for the sake of this slideshow. I don't necessarily believe in having a junk food tax. I'm kind of split on the issue, and this doesn't exactly express my personal views, but I had to write it this way so that we had something persuasive to work with. First thing we're going to do is start at the very beginning, at the top of a paragraph with topic sentence. And just like I said in my previous video about body paragraphs, for topic sentence, you want to look back at the thesis and repeat reason one, or repeat that first thing that you say in the thesis. So reminder that my thesis statement is this whole thing. The United States should adopt a junk food tax because of the issue of obesity and the fact that people need help changing their buying habits. The reason why I have underlined the issue of obesity and crossed out the rest of it is because my topic sentence is really just this. I want to forget about the idea of changing buying habits for now, because I'm saving that for a later paragraph. And if I start to think about it or focus on it, my paragraph might lose focus. So you'll see, this is the very top of my paragraph, and I'm going to label my topic sentence for you right now. The issue of obesity and public health is one reason for why the United States should adopt a junk food tax. I'm basically repeating, I even use the same words up here as I do down here. I kind of just flipped the sentence. Instead of the United States should adopt, I put that at the end, and then I bring up the issue of obesity first. This is a B-level topic sentence, at least in my class if I were doing the grading, because it's not the most creative, but it is high quality and it's highly functional. It does exactly what a topic sentence is supposed to do, and it helps to keep my essay organized. If you're going for a little bit more advanced, you might want to use different wording, look up some synonyms, be a little bit more creative with the topic sentence, but you don't want it to be too far out that you can't recognize it as referring back to the thesis. So that's topic sentence, pretty simple to do. If you are in the process of writing your persuasive body paragraph right now, especially if you're writing it for my class, this is a good spot to pause the video, flip over to your Google Doc, and type up your topic sentence for body paragraph 1 if I've assigned it and we've gotten to that point. However, if you want to get a little bit more information before you go type, you could do that. The other thing you could do is, if you already have your essay typed up, and you're proofreading and you're watching this kind of to help you out or supplement what you already know, this is a good time to go back and read your thesis statement and your topic sentences in your essay and go see how they measure up to the instruction you just got. On to evidence. There's a couple of things I wanted to share with you about evidence for a persuasive paragraph that differs from a literary response paragraph. First, that evidence in a persuasive essay is very important to your credibility as a writer, as well as the credibility of your argument. When you're doing a response to lit and you're replying about or you're writing about why something happened to a book or analyzing a character, you don't really need to establish your own credibility, because your reader already knows that the text that you're talking about exists, and the evidence and the credibility comes from the fact that you're citing evidence in general. Whereas in a persuasive essay, in a literary response essay, your reader has read the same thing as you. So whenever you write about a book or a poem, you have the assumption that the person you're writing to has read the book or poem. Maybe not in the same depth that you have, but they've read the book, they're familiar with what happens, with the characters, the scenes, and everything. And so when you bring up a quote from the book, they're going to be pretty familiar with where in the book it is. It won't be a surprise to them that that was said. However, in a persuasive essay, you need to assume that your reader has not done the same research and does not know anything about the quotes you're presenting. They haven't done any reading about the topic. They don't know where you got these quotes. So you want to make that assumption, and the way that you present evidence is going to help them with that, and it's going to enhance your overall credibility with how clearly you present that. So with evidence, I put a reminder of what I just said up here alongside our entire evidence presentation note page. So evidence, you want to find a quote from your research which supports reason 1, and make sure the article agrees with you or is neutral. I'm going to do a whole video on how to choose the best evidence, because that in itself can be the hardest part of writing a body paragraph for persuasive writing. But that's the one tip I can give you right now in a shorter, where I'm trying to squeeze this in a larger context context is make sure that when you choose your quote, that your quote comes from either a neutral article or an article that agrees with you. If you pull a quote for your side of the argument, but you're pulling it from an article that disagrees with you, and then your reader decides, well, I want to go check out where that quote came from, you're actually sending them down the path to a paper that disagrees with you. Also makes it seem as though maybe you couldn't find anything that actually did agree with you. When you are writing your evidence and you're presenting it, you want to make sure that you are very clear with context. In presenting evidence for a persuasive essay, context is just as important as the quote. You want to state the speaker and the speaker's credentials. If you're talking about a health issue like I am in this essay, is the speaker a doctor or is the speaker citing a doctor? Is the speaker a consumer? Is the speaker someone who is going to gain or lose depending on how this debate turns out? Because that helps the reader understand maybe the context of the quote. Include background information about how that information was obtained. Did a journalist interview a doctor, like in my quote? Is it a quote directly from the doctor? Is it a quote directly from a study done? If needed, state the published source of the quote. If the quote is from a widely read or listened to source, such as CBS, New York Times, the New England Medical Journal, something that's just well known and highly peer reviewed and seen and very credible, it strengthens your quote even more without you having to do anything to the quote. Okay, so context in this case is just as important as the quote. And again, how it differs from a literary response is when you present a quote about a book you're writing about, your reader will be familiar with that quote already, and the context you provide, their brain could probably fill that in. In this case, where for persuasive writing, where they have not read the same stuff as you, their brain can't fill that in, so you have to be very thorough. It's a little bit more work to present evidence in a persuasive essay. For the quote itself, copy the quote exactly as it appears. This is always true, but when you're citing real people who would not want to be misquoted and that they could actually find your writing and learn that they were misquoted, you want to make sure that you do it right. And also, same as always, use only the most important part of the quote. Don't overwhelm your reader with a bunch of extra stuff. Zoom in on the most important part, put the rest of it in context. Citation is extra important in persuasive writing. Most of your English teachers are going to be using MLA format. That's what we've used at every school that we've been to. That's what I used when I was in college. Depending on the school, it might be something else, but use MLA format. Maybe I'll do a video on how to put in an in-text citation, because that in itself can be, it's easy. It really is an easy concept, but it can be very tedious and daunting for younger writers. But don't forget the citation. And if you need help with citations, ask your teacher. So let me show you what it would be like if I just presented a quote to you without telling you anything about it. Economists generally agree that government intervention, including taxation, is justified when the market fails to provide the optimum amount of a good for society's well-being. This sounds like a really good quote. It sounds super credible. Here's the problem though. If I just threw this at you as part of my paragraph and I didn't tell you who said it, where I got it, questions are going to run through your mind. Does this quote actually exist anywhere? Was it said by somebody credible? Or is it something that Mrs. H said, made up, and it just sounds good because she's got a lot of writing training, she could fake a quote? Well, if I don't present any information around it, yeah, you certainly could. And you should not trust a quote unless it's got a really clear source. So here is my context. And see how the quote sounds different after I present to you my context. Oliver Mitten, the co-author of a report in the British Medical Journal, tells The Week magazine, quote, "Economists generally agree that government intervention, including taxation, is justified when the market fails to provide the optimum amount of good for society's well-being." Here I've got an actual person that can be looked up. I say what their position is in the source where I got it from. British Medical Journal is a well-known source. And so if I wanted to maybe go look up this guy or the article he says this in or whatever, I could probably go look that up. And I also worked in the source I got it from, because I didn't read the British Medical Journal. I read an article from the Week magazine that cites this guy and what he wrote in the British Medical Journal. So I'm saying also where I got the quote. I got the quote from the Week magazine, but the Week magazine got this quote from this guy. Okay. Last thing to not forget is a parenthetical citation or an in-text citation at the end of your quote. In this case, it's this word colitis. It is the last name of the author of the whole article. I know for some of you guys, you're going, what? I don't see colitis anywhere in here. And that's because of the way that you're supposed to put in in-text citations, which requires its own video. Again, simple concept, but can be scary. But that's my in-text citation. So finding my evidence in my body paragraph that I've written here, it is visually easy to find because of the quotation marks. Ritterman began researching the issue. He concluded that sugary drinks were a culprit. The empty calories made kids fat and susceptible to incurable illnesses such as diabetes. And in-text citation is Abkarian. That is my quote, but now if I presented that without telling you anything about it, questions in my head as a reader would be, who is this Ritterman person? Who does he think he is to be researching sugary drinks, etc.? In my context up here, Robin Abkarian, journalist for the Los Angeles Times, cites retired cardiologist Jeff Ritterman. I'm actually going to start backwards. Cardiologist is a heart doctor, and this guy, Jeff Ritterman, is the person this quote is about. So Jeff Ritterman doesn't say this quote is about him, but it's important to include the fact that the quote is about a retired cardiologist. It doesn't say that in the quote, so I need to make sure to say it in my context. And now the actual speaker of the quote, or the person who wrote this quote into the article, is this Robin Abkarian, who is a journalist for the Los Angeles Times. And in this way, I've worked in the person who says the quote exactly, the person who the quote is about, and I've worked in the Los Angeles Times, which is the overall source where I got this quote. And it's also another widely read paper. Okay, and not going to forget my parenthetical citation at the end here. And in this case, for this citation, it would be Abkarian. That's my overall evidence presentation. This is a good spot to take a break. Imagine yourself in a beautiful setting. For me, I'm going to think back to my vacation to Bora Bora last year and take a break mentally on this beach. And I will see you back in a bit. Guys, break is over. We're going to talk about analysis. The analysis is always the writer's explanation of how the evidence supports the claim. That is still the same with persuasive. Analyses must always explain the evidence to the reader. What does this quote mean to the debate, and provide a step-by-step connection. Something that is not new to writing persuasive analyses, but very extra important in persuasive analysis, is discuss the credentials of the speaker or source and how he or she is qualified to speak about the topic. Or another way to put this is, how will the speaker gain or lose depending on the outcome of the debate? This is a very important item to analyze, and this is at level 2, and I'll show you how I do this in my analysis, but keep that in mind. You would still do this if you're responding to literature, of course. If there is a speaker in a scene, a particular character, you would still talk about their motives and why they might say it and how they say it. And you're doing the same thing in persuasive writing. It's just, in this case, you're talking about a real person, their real background, and how this debate affects them. You must always tie the evidence back to the topic sentence and the thesis. And in analysis 3, You are connecting the idea to the larger world. You're extending the meaning of the quote beyond its context. And a lot of my students have reported struggling with level 3 in persuasive writing because it feels like, well, when I'm writing about persuasive writing, I'm talking about the world at large already. How do I make sure I'm getting to level 3? And I will show you how. Oddly enough, in persuasive writing, you probably are already hitting level 3. It just doesn't feel like it because it feels like the quote still connects. So let me show you how I write my analysis for persuasive writing and how I get to level 3 and make sure I hit that level. Okay, so analysis. Let me just show you the location first, and then I'm going to show you how I get my analysis. So the location comes after the presentation of evidence, topic sentence, evidence, and presentation, and then all of this analysis. Of course, you know that this goes further down. You guys saw the larger full size of it on an earlier slide. This is just to show you location and that it goes beyond that. Now, analysis brainstorm. How did I get there? How did I get all that stuff to write about this one quote? And really, I got it the exact same way that I demonstrate in the how to annotate poetry video and in the how to annotate persuasive research video. I just really focused in on one particular quote, though, instead of an entire article. So when I found this quote and decided this quote is perfect to go with helping to prevent obesity and helping public health, this is my quote. Robin Abkarian, journalist for the Los Angeles Times, cites retired cardiologist Jeff Ritterman. Ritterman began researching the issue. He concluded that sugary drinks were a culprit. The empty calories made kids fat and susceptible to incurable illnesses such as diabetes, Abkarian. Before I actually started talking about the quote, I started asking questions about the quote. And yes, I do ask level 2 and level 3 questions, but I didn't level them when I first wrote them. They're going to come up as leveled because I went back and determined what level is the question. So my first question was, what is a cardiologist? That word seems pretty key because it is part of this Jeff Ritterman guy's credentials. What is the Los Angeles Times, and is it a credible source? I know that being from the Bay Area, I don't really read SoCal local newspapers, but maybe it's a widely read source, just like the San Francisco Chronicle is a widely read source up here in Northern California. What does culprit mean? If I am not sure what culprit means, if I'm a younger writer or reader and I've never heard this word before or I've never seen it in this context, I'm going to want to make sure I understand what that means. It means at fault or the criminal, the reason for why something wrong is happening. What makes Ritterman qualified to speak on this issue? So I see that he's a cardiologist. Is he someone who's qualified to speak on sugary drinks making kids susceptible to incurable illnesses? And yeah, because diet is a huge part of, well, cardiologist is a heart doctor, simply put. And diet has a huge impact on the health of our hearts. And so he would be someone who is qualified, but I'll answer that later. What other factors can make children obese? So this particular quote, while it was giving me one factor, I thought about, well, what other factors could make a kid overweight or unhealthy? What types of situations would children consume sugary drinks? How can kids be prevented from consuming sugary drinks? How exactly would a tax on sugary drinks prevent kids from drinking them? When I asked these questions, this is definitely something you want to ask when you are tying your quote to your overall thesis, because this is the question. How exactly would a tax on sugary drinks prevent kids from drinking them? This is the question that ties this information to my debate. Because notice, in this quote, it actually doesn't say we should put a tax on junk food. This quote gives me a piece of information that leads me, that leads me to say that a tax on junk food would be a solution. I ask these questions because as I answer them, each time I answer a question, whether it's a long answer, one sentence answer, or a two-word answer, it becomes a part of my analysis. Now, not every single question here needs to be answered. These are just helpers so that when I go and I actually begin typing my analysis and I feel stuck and I want to go back, I can go and answer one of these questions. And if you feel like you're struggling to ask these questions to get your analysis going, you might need someone to help you with that step. Ask a grown-up, ask your teacher, ask a friend, show them the quote and say, can you ask me 3 questions about this quote that maybe I should know the answer to? And then I went back, I leveled them after, and then once I saw that, okay, I got a pretty good amount of level 2 and I got a couple of good level 3s, I could go ahead and start answering these and see how I do. And not all of them will be answered, but this is a really good starting point. This is how I brainstorm. I make sure I know it's okay to not know all the answers, but some of the answers to these will probably be important in an analysis. Remember, when we read, we ask questions. When we write, we are answering those questions. Here's my analysis. I'm going to show you how I address level 2 and level 3. My current students, if you are currently struggling with getting to level 3 or knowing for sure if you wrote an okay, a satisfactory, or even a good or above average level 2 analysis or sentence or point in your analysis, listen carefully and do your best to stay engaged with this, guys. So, first sentence. As a former cardiologist or heart doctor, Jeff Ritterman has the training and experience to research and assess what might be causing a health problem. In this quote, I am talking about Jeff Ritterman and his credentials. I'm doing exactly what I said to do in an analysis, in the level 2 analysis, and talk about the person who says the quote or who the quote is about. The person who says this is actually the journalist, but journalists are supposed to be objective and they're just conveyors. They're supposed to be just conveyors of information. It's who she's citing in this moment, which is Jeff Ritterman, that's important. And I talk about how, yeah, he's a cardiologist, a heart doctor, and he's got the background to be able to speak on what can cause heart problems and perhaps even how to prevent it. The next sentence, though there are many factors that can cause obesity and disease, Dr. Ritterman has found one common factor among American children which can be curbed: consuming sugary drinks. So this is a level 2 question. I did address that there are many factors that can cause obesity and disease. There's genetics, there's malnutrition, there's all kinds of things that might be in or out of a kid's control. But what I'm pointing out is that in this quote, he has found something, which is consumption of sugary drinks, that can be controlled because it's an outside source of these ailments. And so this is a level 2 because I'm still working within the quote and working to connect the quote to my thesis. Next sentence, these drinks are tasty and addicting. Oh boy, do I know. I grew up drinking a lot of soda. I loved soda when I was a kid. And when they are cheaper than a healthier drink, such as a bottle of water, they are even easier to reach for. Remember in my previous video, if I can start a sentence with "in general," it's probably a level 3, and this sentence can be started with "in general." In general, these drinks are tasty and addicting. I'm speaking universally. And how many of you actually said to yourself, yeah, you know, I love soda, or I used to love soda. It took me a lot to cut soda out of my diet. So I certainly can agree with this, and I know a lot of people can. And so I'm speaking to level 3 because I'm speaking universally. This is true for all of us. And it is easier to reach for an unhealthy and tastier drink when it is cheaper than a healthier drink. I have seen, those Voss waters and Smart Vitamin waters. I have seen those cost more than a can of soda, and they can be harder to reach for when the soda's cheaper and yummier. Making a good health choice is a struggle for many adults. Oh boy, yeah. And it takes a lot of self-discipline for a grown-up to choose wisely. So children would also face the same struggle in the drink aisle at the store. This is a level 3. I'm extending it out to adults at first. The second part might be kind of level 2-ish because I'm going back and talking about children, and the quote is about children. But in general, I'm extending this out to adults. Now, this is where I need to make the connection, because when groceries are done for the family, usually it's the adults going to the grocery store and picking up the groceries, and kids don't really have a choice in what kinds of drinks are brought home to their houses. And even so, there might be situations where kids do have a choice, because I know a lot of my students after school, especially on a Friday, will go down to the local store that's walking distance down the street from our school and go pick up sugary snacks and have a good time and hang out and wait for pickup. It's one of the great moments, the fun moments of being a kid, is getting to go and pick out your own food and buy it. But it's a lot of times in those situations, it's a moment where a kid has a choice, and they would also face that same struggle in the drink aisle. If an adult has trouble with that self-discipline and picking a healthier drink, like I can speak firsthand, we certainly do, kids would also face that as well. So next sentence, if soda and sugary drinks were priced significantly higher than healthy drinks, parents could take more control over their kids' buying habits by only providing enough allowance to purchase a healthy drink during an after-school convenience store visit with friends. So I am directly addressing a situation where kids have full control over what they're going to buy, or at least have choice, but giving parents a way to eliminate some of that choice so the kid makes a healthier choice. This is a level 3 because of the if. I'm presenting a hypothetical situation where a junk food tax has been put in place. That is level 3. You might already have a level 3, so you should check if you've already written your analysis. Do you have a spot where you say, if we do this, this will happen? That is a very level 3 statement. Next sentence, imagine the difference a junk food tax would make if it prevented even just 1 out of every 4 kids from purchasing a sugary drink. Obesity would be reduced, and so would diet-related diseases. This is level 3. I've got this word imagine. It works a lot like the word if. It's presenting a alternate universe, a hypothetical situation where if we do what I say we should do, this is the difference it will make. You might already have a statement a lot like this in your analysis, and you might be hitting level 3. Here I'm talking about children. Children in a situation where they get to make a choice about drinks. Watch what I do in the next sentence. The difference could be extended into the adult community if the heightened price of a sugary drink caused just 1 in every 4 adults to reach for a healthier beverage instead. Level 3. In the quote, the quote is about children. I have extended this out to the adult community as well. I've talked about how this will benefit people beyond the quote, outside of the context of the quote. Ways to do this. 8th graders, you guys are talking about social media and whether colleges and employers should look at social media. If your quote is about college, extend it out to talk about employers. Vice versa. If your quote is about employers, extend it back and talk about colleges. That is a way to make it level 3 for my 8th graders. Okay, so here I've hit level 2 and I've hit level 3, and I think I've done a thorough job of getting my analysis labeled for you guys. So analysis is pretty heavy, and this is a good spot to take another break. We've got 1 more lap and then a finish line. Okay, second break is over, and we are on to concluding sentences. Last lap of this video. Concluding sentences are the last sentence of a body paragraph, reminding you that that is its location. It should clearly end the paragraph for the reader. The reader should feel like the paragraph is done. Mirroring the topic sentence is a very simple way to conclude. I'm going to note that it is not an advanced way to conclude. This is something that I and many writing teachers have younger grades do to develop the practice of ending a body paragraph, but older grades, 8th through 10th grade, are usually expected to kind of find more creative ways, ways that transition into the next paragraph a little bit more smoothly. So if it is the last body paragraph of the essay, it should work to conclude the arguments that body paragraph presented and transition the reader from the body paragraphs to the conclusion. So if it is the last of the body paragraphs, in that concluding sentence, you want to start preparing your reader for a conclusion. Start sounding concluding. Now, if you are transitioning, because a typical essay will have 2 to 3 body paragraphs, if it's between body paragraph 1 and body paragraph 2, or going from 2 to 3, it should conclude that paragraph's arguments and transition the reader into the next paragraph. If there is some sort of connection between what you talk about in body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3, this is a good place to note that connection, especially if you're not really able to go in depth about that connection. It makes a really nice transition. For any kind of body paragraph, persuasive or literary response or anything, avoid saying in conclusion, all in all, or the worst of them, in a nutshell. Don't use these sentence starters for conclusions, or at least don't leave them in. If you need to have a sentence starter in your concluding sentence to get your brain into a concluding tone, that's fine. Just make sure that you erase these before you move on, before you conclude your paragraph, or before you call it a final draft. So pretty easy to locate and label a concluding sentence. Up here was my evidence. All of this is my analysis, and down here I've got a little sliver of words. I did the mirroring a topic sentence style for this body paragraph. There's my concluding sentence. A junk food tax would have a positive impact on public health in the United States. This sounds a lot like the topic sentence that I had up above. This is an important note to my students who currently have me in class during distant learning and possibly in the future. A lot of students will ask, how many quotes do I use in a paragraph? My 7th graders, when it's your turn to write your body paragraph, it is 1 quote only, just like the example we just saw. So when you color code your body paragraph, it should be green, yellow, pink, green. Only 1 quote for 7th grade. That's all I need from you guys, and that is appropriate for your grade level. Please do not use 2 quotes unless you talk to me first, and I really would prefer for you guys to learn to work with 1 quote. 8th graders, you guys are a little bit older, a little bit more writing experience, and you guys are getting ready for high school, so you need to do 2 quotes per body paragraph, and I'm going to show you examples of what that looks like on the next slide. So 2 quotes per body paragraph for 8th graders. In general, 2 quotes is the way to go. However, you should probably ask your teacher before you're certain about it. And then if your teacher still gives you kind of an unclear well, however many you think you need, 2 quotes is a good rule of thumb in general for 8th grade and above because it's not too long. It allows you to diversify your evidence and get different quotes from different sources, and it's not so long that your reader feels like you're just going on and on. 2 quotes is a very safe place to be. In 8th grade and above, 1 quote very often doesn't feel like enough. So here's a 2 quote paragraph. I am going to admit that I maybe didn't go as deep in the analysis as I should have because I wanted it to fit on the screen for you guys so you could see what a 2 quote paragraph looks like. But I can guarantee you this would get at least a B, maybe an A-, but I just wanted to make something that's going to fit on the page. Before we read this paragraph, I want to remind you of the thesis statement. I am going to pretend that this is body paragraph 2 in the same essay I've got going in the slide about junk food tax. In body paragraph 1, I talked about issue of obesity. Now imagine this is body paragraph 2, and I'm going to focus in on reason number 2, people need help changing their buying habits. So my topic sentence, another reason a junk food tax is necessary is because it will help change people's buying habits. Evidence. In the article, Should the U.S. Adopt a Junk Food Tax?, The Week magazine uses cigarette taxes as an example. Quote, the cigarette tax could serve as a model for a tax on obesity-causing foods following the implementation of a steep cigarette tax in the 1990s, effectively raising the cost of cigarettes by 50%. Smoking rates plummeted sharply. Colitis. Analysis. This quote shows that after the cost of cigarettes were raised, many people chose to not smoke. Smoking is known to be a very addictive habit because of the chemicals contained in cigarettes. This is really important what I do next. This is no different from an addiction to sugary drinks or fatty foods because in the same way, our brains and bodies form a dependency and we crave the junk food. So notice that the quote wasn't about junk food. It was about if we tax junk food, it'll be the same. So I needed to make sure I made that similarity clear between taxing cigarettes and taxing junk food, not just in the practice, but maybe even likening junk food to cigarettes. We need a deterrent from junk food, and a tax reminds us of the toll the food will take on our bodies, will cause many Americans to make a better choice, just like the tax on cigarettes in the 1990s. I apologize for some grammar errors there. Okay, next, evidence. Notice I didn't start a new paragraph at all. It's in the next paragraph. I just continue starting with the next sentence. According to Forbes magazine, Hungary has already introduced a junk food tax, and a study conducted by the country's National Institute of Pharmacy and Nutrition and the World Health Organization reports, quote, 4 years after Hungary's tax was introduced, more than 59% of consumers had lowered their consumption of the offending junk food products. Weintraub. Analysis. This study demonstrates a junk food tax working as planned and changing buying habits of the public. People's addiction to fatty and sugary foods is no different in Hungary than in the United States. Notice what I did here, because a lot of people might say, well, what works in Hungary might not work in the United States. Of course, but in my analysis, I made sure to point out that in the way that we're all human and we all love sugary, fatty foods, that's what's going to be the same. Neither are the health impacts these foods have on our bodies. Also pointing out that junk food is going to have the same impact on a human body no matter where in the world they live. Another similarity humans share globally is the desire to save money. Coupling the desire to save money and a tax on sugary foods will reduce the consumption of junk food significantly, 59% in Hungary, because many will make a healthier choice at the grocery store. Concluding sentence, a junk food tax has been proven to change buying habits so they will make healthier choices. I'm going to point out a few techniques I did in this paragraph and which maybe warrant their own videos, but in this quote, I did a quote that uses a past example of a tax working to curb people's buying habits. And so that's a technique you can use is find one quote from the past and then one quote from current or the future. This is a place where this is already being done and it's working well, something that's current and where it is actually happening. So that is one technique you can use when you've got a two-quote body paragraph. Some takeaways. Persuasive body paragraphs are the same structure as regular response to literature stoplight paragraphs. Be very exact when presenting evidence and where you got that quote. That's something that is definitely elevated in a persuasive paragraph versus a response to lit paragraph. And just like you would in a response to lit paragraph, don't forget to hit level 2 and level 3 in your analysis. All right, guys, I hope that wasn't too much for you to take in. If it was, I hope you took breaks where you were supposed to. Body paragraphs is always a pretty big topic, whether we are talking about literary response or persuasive. So hopefully you got the most out of that video. This video is still here. It will be here, so feel free to rewatch anything that you don't feel like you got the first time. Comment below with any questions you might have. If there's enough questions about a particular thing, maybe I could address it in a future video. Upcoming video is going to be counter arguments, and I know that my students are like, please do a counter argument video, and that is on the way. All right, guys, don't forget to click like and subscribe so that you get notifications whenever I upload a new video. To my students with whom I'm supposed to be sitting in class, I miss you guys. I hope you're doing okay. Reach out to me if you've got any updates, questions, or you just want to say hi. To the students I've acquired on this channel, go ahead and comment below. Let me know how you're doing or if you've got any questions. All right, guys, until the next video, I will see you next time.